In this film, we're going to go over some additional tools in Blender, kind of getting back into modeling, but also using some of the things that Blender can offer to help make things a little bit faster, and so you don't have to do maybe as much of some of the basic stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go over to File, and then go down from File to User Preferences. You can also do Control-Alt-U, and then in the Blender User Preferences, we want Middle tab, and just like an earlier video that I went on, things that you should turn on: Add Curve and Mesh. The animation settings should all be on. Anything that's already on, leave on. And then as well as Materials, Mesh, and Node and Object. Those should be, if you add all those things in, then that should cover most of the things that I'm looking at and covering, and actually more than what I'm going to go into and cover right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save User Settings. If you don't click Save User Settings, then it won't change anything the next time you're in Blender. So once you check the box on a component, you can use it, it'll add it in, but you won't be able to get back to it unless you actually save your settings. I'm going to go down to, I'm actually going to delete my cube first here, so I'm going to delete that. And now when I go to add objects, I have a lot more things in my different areas and stuff. So I'm going to go to Mesh. I'm going to go down to where it says Landscape. This is a very useful tool. When you add something like this, don't move it around right away. Go into the settings for it and change things. For instance, here I can do different kinds of changes to the object. I can make it look like a sphere, or I could unclick that so that you could make it look like a little asteroid or something. There's also a thing called seed value or random seed, where if I change this to a 1, it'll change that terrain a little bit. You can have you can add subdivisions to your surfaces, and also to the sizes. You can change that as well. All those will do different things. So if I expand this out, you can see I get some additional terrain from that. But if I expand my size in the X direction, I probably want to also increase the subdivisions in the X direction, and then you can figure out kind of what looks best for that or not. And again, you can also make it into a nice big sphere. It looks like a meatball. There we go. So I'm going to undo that. And so you can play around with the different settings, see what you like, what works for you. There's also a noise type. So right now it's on this one. If I click on it, I can get different types of noise, where I can see it has different effects. Oops, clicked on that one. There we go. So you can play around with this, try different things, see what they look like. And so you can play around and get some very different settings. Like, that's kind of neat, actually, I think. So some other settings in here that you might want to be aware of is that offset's going to change the direction things are in. So here I can move that back and forth. I can move it this way. Too bad you can't key these, actually, because that would be kind of fun to animate. But again, once you move this object, all these settings go away. We can change the depth. So for instance, let me actually reduce this down. I should get it shrinking it at some point. There we go. Maybe get some nice little like dunes going on almost, not quite. And I'm going to move that back up. You can also do dimensions, which is very similar. It's more, I think, stretching and distorting in one way or another, but some different settings there. There's, again, some of these are pretty self-explanatory, but you can play with them, see what you can get it to do. display settings. So if I take my object here and I have this maximum and minimum, if I reduce my maximum, I'll end up creating plateaus. If I have a one that goes up and it hits plateaus in it, and I want to be able to allow it to go higher, then I want to take my maximum and increase that so that if my height increases, then it'll cut off wherever that was. Okay, so there you could create some interesting walls that way too, like maybe in a cave or something, don't know. But it's all stuff that you want to play with. I noticed this for the first time, water plane. Have no idea what that will do. You can give it a material, which is kind of cool. Ooh, set a level, so you can actually set for if you have a generate kind of a place for where the water level would be in a scene or setting, which is kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to actually take those and get rid of them, but if I move it first, you'll notice that all those settings go away. I don't get to work with them at all. I just have my normal settings for, in this case, as I'm moving things back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to go to Shift A. On the rest of these, I'm not going to spend as much time. I'm just going to highlight stuff, but that's a very useful one for helping create scenes. You can scale it up quite a bit to get a good idea of how it looks and works. I have this one that says Archimesh, where it has these different things. So I haven't played around with this very much. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Stairs. So here I have, I can say number of steps. It's kind of handy. I can tell the type of steps. There we go. So you can change lots of different settings very quickly, getting different results to play around with. And so there's settings in there. There's also, if I add another object here, I'm going to go down to Arch Pack, where again I also have some different things like this. I'm going to go click on Stair again, and it doesn't give me a image of this. You have some descriptions, but I'm going to go ahead and click on one of them, and cool. Here I have one that goes around, and this has markers on it as well that now are gone because I just clicked on it. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that out as well, but some things to play with. There's also Bolt Factory, where you can create different types of things. So if you're making a model and you wanted some detail in it and you wanted to get really kind of sophisticated, you could use this. You could change the type of head on it. You could have it so that it has like a Phillips, or you could even do an Allen wrench, so you can make it look a little bit differently in different ways. If, by the way, you're ever like moving around the screen and suddenly like things don't seem to move or rotate correctly, just hit the decimal on the number pad, and that way it'll refocus on that object and you can move it around pretty quick. So they have some different things here. They also have some specific types of bolts and things that you can select, and their dimensions and settings. You can increase different parts of this to have different effects to replicate different things. So you can play around with it with a lot of detail. I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to add under mesh still. I'm going to go down to where it says math function. So you could do calculation. So here we have a nice parabola in 3 dimensions. And here I can see the math formula for that. If I do to the 3rd power and then just hit enter, you can graph that visually as well. So those of you guys that are in pre-calculus and calculus, you could create your graphs and things in this program if you wanted. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to add another type of surface here, where, or another object, I should say. And so I'm going to go down to where it says torus objects, and here we have some different ones like torus knot. And again, you can increase the details. You can change knot type in this case. It has a few selections, I think only 3 of them. Yeah. And so you can add some different objects there. And I probably won't select on the other ones as you go through, but there's some mechanical things that you can do. A gear generator, you can change all kinds of settings there. There's some mesh extras where we have a beam builder, a wall factory. Actually, I'll come back and do that one. Simple star, step pyramid, honeycomb, teapot, and Menger sponge, which is a fractal type thing. But I'm going to go ahead and click on this wall generator here. It's upside down. And again, lots of settings in this where you can play around with it, try different things. So you can change the width of the bricks, you can change the height, you can change, again, pretty much everything that we change, you can change. That's interesting. Okay, so play around with some of these different features and things, try them out, see their settings, but that can be something that helps you as you're building something. You might be able to create part of it for yourself very quickly. I've used the math function before to create parts of vehicles, so they're just kind of more tools for you to mess with. And there is, in the different things, the curves, there's again some added objects too as well. And so you can play with different things there. We also have some things like in the armature. We actually have a human meta rig. So if you're building a person, you can use that kind of as a guideline rather than build a person and then add a mesh. You could actually use this for the mesh or for the design to build your mesh off of. Basically everything in this is a little maybe overkill for what we're going to do in this class, but all of these things are adjustable so that you could actually rotate and work with them and stuff, and play with the different settings here. And so, like if I'm in pose mode, I can rotate the arm, and you can animate your object from doing that. I'm going to go ahead and tab out of this fully. There we go. I had to use Control Tab to go through all the cycles there. But anyway, some nice tools to use. Play around with them. In the next one, we're going to talk a little bit about physics, and then we're going to talk about particle system in the video after that.